story of the rise of the son of peasant farmers from the little village of Sombo, nestled in the rural savanna vegetation of the northern part of Ghana, to one of the highest positions in the land, continued its remarkable trajectory after he qualified to practice as a lawyer.
Immediately after I was called to the bar, I approached the late Nana Abedi II, known in private life as lawyer Kofi Ofosu Asante. The first surprise I had was my first day in his chambers. What he did was that he said, "Oh, I had a case before the Supreme Court the next day. Please, this is the docket. Can you represent me in the Supreme Court tomorrow?" I took this docket, and that was a shock. How do I go to represent the Supreme Court? It's not magistrate court, where you go and you see your colleagues, young lawyers and others still trying to cut their teeth. Supreme Court, which was for very senior lawyers. Those days, the judges were really very, very senior aged people who wore some frightening beards, like anybody who knew Justice VCRAC Crab, long gray beard with very small, tiny specks that were on his nose, but he was looking usually outside on the neck like this. He wasn't looking through the lenses. And they were the people presiding. And that was my first experience at the Supreme Court. That really helped me because within a very short time, I made waves in the High Court in Accra. And that earned me a lot of cases because people knew that if your case was bad, there was no way I would pretend and deceive that I would let you know as a fact. So I got a lot of respect from the bench and then from the clients. And so even though I had difficulty in speaking languages, I got so many clients that my colleagues in the chambers used to be asking, but how were you getting these clients? But also because 1/3 of the cases I did were pro bono. They were free. I used it to try and help the vulnerable, the poor who couldn't pay, and that kind of. So I was doing those free cases for them. Another 1/3 I charged very minimal, but the other 1/3 definitely was from people who could make it, and so they paid and subsidized the pro bono cases. So Justice Brobe, who just retired, my lordship, the former Chief Justice, Justice Georgina Wood, was a very good friend because we're both in the Christian Lawyers Fellowship. And many of them that appeared before had very good words for me, and they recommended from time to time clients to me. And so I was very, very busy from 1982 until the coup and the consequences on the legal practice became rather difficult for one to continue. And so I wrote to state hotels to be a personnel manager, and I was taken. And so I was sent during my orientation through Ambassador Hotel, Continental Hotel, City Hotel, Star Hotel here, and then Atlantic in Takoradi. But when I finished all the orientation, I was then stationed at Continental Hotel, now Golden Tulip, as a personnel manager, 1983. And then I was appointed a regional tribunal chairman and asked to go to sit at Koforidua. And that was a very precarious, risky place to go. So I resisted it. That propelled me to join the team that was being recruited to teach English in Libya, because I didn't want to be compelled to go and chair the public tribunal in Kofredua. So I left on the 23rd of September 1983 to Libya, Tripoli, Libya, to teach English. And I was there for 3 good years until America bombed us out of Libya. And the Libyans banned all books that were written in English, rather from primary school to a university. And they asked all English teachers to barhar, leave. And we had to leave. And I went through Europe and got to UK finally, where I spent a short period. And my wife was with me. And we came back on the 16th of November, 1986.
In 1992, Ghana, which had been under quasi-military rule since December 1981, under the leadership of the charismatic and daring Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings and his ruling Provisional National Defense Council, PNDC, opted for a new democratic dispensation under a new constitution that was overwhelmingly accepted by the people of Ghana in a nationwide referendum held in April of that year. In keeping with the requirement of the 1992 Constitution, presidential and parliamentary elections were held in November 1992, which provided for a 4-year electoral cycle. It was the fervent hope and aspirations of most Ghanaians that the new constitution would be sustained, as against the previous 3 Republican experiments, which were all interrupted by military interventions in 1966, 1972, and 1981, respectively. The immediate prelude to the national elections of 1992 saw a flurry of political activity as several political parties were founded by disparate ideological groupings to contest the forthcoming polls. The most prominent of the parties formed were the Left of Center National Democratic Congress (NDC), which sought the continuation of the policies and programs of the PNDC, and the right-leaning New Patriotic Party, which consists of many who opposed the status quo at the time. The NDC and several smaller parties formed an alliance to contest the elections and nominated Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings as their candidate. This was also the time that Alban Bagbin stepped up to the plate as the NDC candidate for his home constituency of Nadoli North in the Upper West region of Ghana.
The usual meetings at Sangaba's place was where we all got the information that the PNDC, after a long search, painful discussions, sometimes serious disagreements, finally settled on forming a party, which was going to be the National Democratic Congress, and then needed people to go and stand in the various constituencies to contest. So Sangaba was one of those who urged me to go and contest in our constituency, because we are from the same constituency. I met Alhaji Idris Mama, who insisted I should go and contest. I thought at that time I was young and I needed to amass some moss and rise up to the stage of a senior practitioner before going to politics. But the response I got was that you were thinking about yourself, you are not thinking about your people, the people who really invested and brought you up. And that gave me sleepless nights, because for a long time I've been thinking of what I could do to help my people. In spite of all the struggle I made, when I was in primary school and they said, anywhere you got all the community treated you like their child, and they could give you whatever to eat, and it was like a family. And so it's still in me, and I always want to reach out to support, particularly when the late Cardinal Derry supported me to travel. The late Alhaji Moshi, headmaster, supported me. My brothers who were in Accra from the north, who supported me when I was in Legon. What was it that I have to do to support the society and my people? That is what really pushed me.
Amongst the 200 entrants that comprised the first parliament of the Fourth Republic of Ghana was the young, eager, and capable Alban Bagbin.
When I got to the constituency, they hadn't done the demarcation yet, and I announced it. It was a surprise to many, because what they were all told was that NDC belonged to the riffraffs. They never do well, they're uneducated. And then they had a lawyer practicing in Accra, and they've heard of suits come to say he's coming to stand on the ticket of the NDC. That was a surprise. Then they had told them a lot of falsehoods about how the NDC who killed people, did so many bad things and all those things. And so how could such a gentleman, as they knew me to be, where I went home almost every year, and I went greeting the elders. Didn't go around drinking, but greeting the elders, the chiefs in particular. And so people were surprised. My family, my senior brothers, one of who had become a chief, were all with MPP just because of this. And then they also said the cadres who were there, because some people stole, they were arrested, the cadres caned them, they tried to instill discipline, and they said that they all turned against where the cadres belonged, which was NDC. And I had to go around to turn this around.
We were in the first parliament together. We actually sat together for the first few months that we started in the International Conference Center. He was very good at advocacy and was part of the group of us who turned ourselves into an internal opposition. You know, when we got into parliament, the other parties, NPP in particular, didn't come. We had NCP. And were NDC, 187 people, and NCP, an independent candidate. So we needed to create an opposition within ourselves. We called ourselves the devil's advocates. I can remember Kosikede Honorable. I can remember Game, former MP for Northton. I can remember Asiedu Nketia, General, who was from Wenchi West at the time, and a few others, so that if there was no official opposition, we then constituted ourselves. And Bagbin was one of our leaders, and you can realize then that all the laws that we made, most of the laws that we made, even in the parliament that there was no opposition, nobody has faulted any of it. I remember the most important was the serious fraud office law, which was processed by Mr. Bagbin's committee, and there were more than 100 amendments, and we came out. The serious fraud is now the IOCO. So I'm saying that he contributed a lot, particularly in the first two parliaments when we were all honorary members of parliament.
Alban's mental acuity and superlative grasp of parliamentary procedure and his well-thought-out contributions during parliamentary debates and committee work caught the eye of the leadership of the majority caucus. Thus, as a result, he served on certain key parliamentary standing and select committees, such as Chairman, Committee of the Subsidiary Legislation, Vice Chairman, Committee of Mines and Energy, and Member, Committee on Local Government and Rural Development. Alban, despite his exploits in Parliament, remained an active participant in the delivery of requisite services and assistance to his constituency and constituents. He lobbied hard and supported development projects such as schools, medical facilities, and social programs to elevate the living standards and well-being of the citizens of Nadoli and the Upper West region. Outside his parliamentary duties, he continued plying his vocation as managing partner of Law Trust, which to date is one of the most respected legal chambers in the country. 1996. The second presidential and parliamentary elections were held in December. The New Patriotic Party contested the elections and garnered 61 seats as against the 133 seats by the incumbent NDC, who remained the majority in Parliament. Jerry John Rawlings was retained as president for his second and last term. Alban Bagbin, on his enviable record in Parliament and his constituency, was nominated by the NDC again as candidate for Nadoli, where he triumphed once more in the elections to represent his people during the second Parliament of the Fourth Republic. He was a key member of several important parliamentary committees, including Public Accounts, Subsidiary Legislation, which he had previously chaired in the last Parliament. He was chairman of Constitution, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs and member of the Committee on Local Government and Rural Development. At constituency level, Alban actively worked to promote and implement developmental projects in his area of jurisdiction, ensuring that facilities for health, education, road networks, and the welfare of his constituents were duly delivered.
His relationship with the health sector has been a very cordial one. Very cordial one. We can call on him at any time. We can go to his house, we visit him, we discuss health issues. And he's always ready to ask us what our priorities are. He never throws down things on us. He would first of all ask, Director, with your able team members, can you tell me what your priorities are? And let me go ahead and look for support for you.
His constituents found him affable, engaging, and accessible.
If you visit him at home, the first thing that struck you was, does this man ever have any time to himself? You would be met with a long queue of constituents who go in, each of them with a personal problem to present to him. And how he's able to address every single one of those challenges. Sometimes, he will tell you to the extent of often emptying his pockets just to ensure that he pleases his constituents. That comes across to me as a very selfless leader indeed.
On the national front, the NDC continued on the rapid accelerated development agenda that had been inspired and worked on in the previous NDC government. Alban was at the forefront of working with the leadership of government to ensure that Ghanaians from all walks of life enjoyed the benefits of government policies. In December 2000, after the end of the tenure of Jerry John Rawlings, the NDC contested the elections of that year, and unfortunately for the party, it lost both the presidential and parliamentary elections, with John Agyekum Kufuor, the candidate of the NPP, becoming the second president of the Fourth Republic of Ghana. And with 103 seats for the NPP, 89 for the NDC, 3 for the PNC, 1 for the CPP, and 4 for independent members, the NPP became the majority party in Parliament. The first time in the political history of Ghana that a party in opposition had taken over the reins of government through the ballot box. This served to reinforce the democratic credentials of the country in Africa and the world. Alban Bagbin, who had been nominated for the third time to stand as Member of Parliament for his constituency, retained the seat and continued the membership of several key parliamentary committees and assumed the chairmanship of the influential Public Accounts Committee and ranking member of the Appointments Committee. The NDC Minority Caucus in Parliament, in recognition of Alban Bagbin's sterling contribution and superlative knowledge of parliamentary procedure, amongst others, was named Minority Leader, a position he performed with great dexterity and panache, much to the admiration of members of Parliament on both sides of the House. This was a period of adjustment, from being a member of the Majority Caucus to becoming a member of the Minority Caucus in Parliament. Alban, despite the disadvantage of not belonging to a political party in power, continued his good work in his constituency and in national affairs and became a highly respected repository of parliamentary practice and policy formulation. He served on several parliamentary delegations to international conferences all over the world.
I have personally held that job, that role, as his media advisor, as his PR advisor, and I can proudly say we've done some great work together. quite apart from his own personal contributions, in my community where I come from, especially when I became chief. Okay, the big man called me and says, "Hey, chief, I now have the money to build your chips compound." And today, that chips compound stands. Don't talk about education, don't talk about water, don't talk about women's empowerment, using the shea butter processing plant to support women in my community and many other communities in the constituency to basically empower themselves and earn a bit of living, out of the support that he gave them.
NDC as a minority party was reliant on the innovative leadership of Alban and his colleagues in the caucus to shore up the confidence and to keep the government of the day on its toes.
His contribution to democracy in this country even heightened in the 8 years that he was a minority leader. I know those days, as our minority leader, the only office the minority had was his office. So for all the press conferences that he addressed and for all the things that some of us had to contribute to, we needed to congregate in his office. He came to office as early as 7 o'clock and sometimes close as late as 9 o'clock. You scarcely find a letter on his table that he does not attend to the same day.
In the 2004 elections, the NDC, failing to offset the incumbency of the MPP, lost both the parliamentary and presidential elections again, with John Ajekum Kufuor being returned for a second time as president. It must be noted that the number of parliamentary constituencies in the country had been increased from 200 to 230. Alban Bagbin, nominated for a fourth time, remained the minority leader, and with his colleagues in the minority caucus were a thorn in the flesh of the ruling government, especially in the areas of public policy and infrastructure development. It must be added that Alban's portfolio of experience included membership of solid international bodies. Alban Sumanu Kingsford Bagbin's epic journey to national prominence continues.
Ma ema kwa dulsira kwa nwa moza kese kwa yengogana